Hey there, guys. Good to be back with you. We're going to go back, take another look here at these NP3 boards and talk a little bit more about pitching. So this is still really sort of the basics of the game. We're going to just take a look and see exactly how we get to the A, B, C, and D. So we'll go over here to the screen. So give you a look at what things look like here. We'll go on over to the options and rules, then over to the boards. So as we looked at last time, you see there's A, B, C, and D are your four pitching grades. The way the J. Richard Seitz created APBA's pitching system was with the four pitching grades. As I understand it from those who studied it, and I've not yet studied it in much depth, it was a combination of the grades and of this fielding system, fieldings 1, 2, and 3, that is what J. Richard Seitz put together to try to control runs being scored and to try to come up with sort of a defensive component of the game. Really kind of a brilliant way of doing this, right? We're going to talk about this, I think, a little bit later, probably in a couple months, if not later than that. But one of the brilliant things about J. Richard Seitz is so unusual is that he was able to figure out a way to create a system to create defense for national pastime without requiring extra dice rolls. And I'm very impressed that he was able to do that. I don't know if there are many precedents out there for this or not. Somebody else may have to do a little bit of the legwork to see if Seitz lifted this from a different game or if it was fully his invention. If it's one of the few things he actually invented, I would actually argue that that's a pretty good and pretty powerful thing to do. So what Skeetersoft NP3 does is it takes this sort of a step further, right? So with APBA, original APBA, you only have A, B, C, or D pitchers. Sometimes really good pitchers will get an A and C, and I think there's one guy who got an A and B. In the mid-1970s, 75, I believe, the APBA Master Game came out. The Master Game created an innovation where you had 30 different pitcher grades. It worked sort of like the ABCD system, but it was much more abstracted, and then there were different ways that the grades could go up or down a little bit based on the handedness of the batter and all sorts of other complicating factors. We're not going to go into that here, in part because it's a mess, right? That goes along with a lot of the complaints out there about J. Richard Seitz and his innovations, his inventions, and whether they really were inventions and all that stuff. That's one of those real hobby drama type things, and we're going to talk a lot about that, believe me. What we're going to talk about, however, is the Bill Staffa's system, which uses that same 30 grade concept and uses it to sort of index these later grades. So the way that this works is you go over here to the advanced pitching rules, and this is where we kind of figure this one out. It's called advanced pitching rules because in theory, with the original boards that are included here in this game, you could play with old APBA cards if you wanted to and not have to use an advanced system at all. Just use the A, B, C, or D ratings and you'll come up with a result. If it's accurate or not, if it's really, tailored to the boards or not, well, that's another question, right? But you can get a result, right? Which is kind of the nice thing. This system is designed to use two different advanced pitching rating charts labeled A and B, and I'll go and see if I can figure out exactly where those charts are located. Both of the charts work the same way. And the chart being used is determined by the year that you're playing. So when you got the cards itself, or the fan boards, you actually got two different advanced pitching rule charts. Back in the day when I had charts, I had probably 10 or so copies of these, maybe not that many, 6 or 7, right? But a whole bunch of copies of the pitching charts. And so some of the seasons would use chart A, some would use chart B. So as an example of the way this would work, and we'll take a look and see if we can figure out sort of the where the chart itself actually is. And that's a good question here. How come I'm not seeing exactly where it is? No worries. We'll figure this out. It's going to be hidden here somewhere because it's all in the game. The way that it works is that the starting pitcher, when he comes into the game, will have a grade from 1 to 30 combined with a Q rating. And so what the Q rating does, the Q rating is sort of like your fatigue rating, whereas the grade itself is the pitching grade that you're at. And you use a combination of the two to find out what grade you start off at and where your cutoff is. So say a pitcher with a grade of 15 with a Q rating of 2 would, when you look at the chart, if we can find the chart, would end up with a base grade of A for the first 3 innings and then afterwards a B in the 4th inning. Right, so you can kind of see how this works. And now let's see, there's the advanced pitching chart B, right? So let's go back and we'll look at this again. This isn't designed to be very user-friendly. We said grade of 15 and Q rating of 2. So we go back over here. We have Q rating of 2, and here is the 15 grade. And you can see the base grade starts off as an A pitcher, and the 4th inning turns into a B pitcher, no matter what. And then there's an adjustment, right? So coming into the 7th inning, we start to look at the adjustment. How does the adjustment works? His adjustment rating is if he gets to the 7th inning and there are 2 base runners, then he loses 1 letter grade. Once the pitcher enters the 7th inning, his grade is reduced 1 letter grade as soon as he allows 2 new base runners. The calculation for base runners is cumulative and does not have to be in the same inning. So he gets through the 7th, doesn't allow a base runner, gets through the 8th, doesn't allow 1. In the 9th, he gives up 1, so he's still a B. We go to the 10th, and he allows a second. Boom, he goes down to a C. After the first reduction, each additional new base runner further reduces the pitcher 1 letter grade. So if it's the 7th inning and he gives up 2 walks, no base hits, then he'll go down to a C. If he hits a guy with a pitch, the next guy who comes up, he'll go down to a D. Right? For example, in the 7th inning, the pitcher gives up a walk. He gets the next 3 batters out and gives up a single to the first batter in the 8th. At this point, he has reduced 1 letter grade to a C. Let's say the next batter walks. He has then reduced another letter grade to a D. So Cyrus, if you're watching this, you need to put in some punctuation here because this is not very well written. However, when we speak it and read it out loud, it makes sense, right? Additionally, there is a cutoff grading. So we go back here, we'll look at the boards, and here is a cutoff rating which says 9D for this particular pitcher. So what this means is that once the starting pitcher reaches the 9th inning, he reverts to a D-rated pitcher. But there is an exception to this, which is that if he's pitching no-hitter, he'll remain at his current grade until he gives up his first hit, and then he's immediately a D pitcher. So he could be a B through the 7th and the 8th inning, and then once he hits the 9th, he becomes a D. All right, so that's the way it works for starters. I'm guessing that we're probably only going to be able to get through the advanced pitching rules for starters today. And the reason why is because it does take quite a bit of time to explain this, and relievers are similar, but they're going to be a little bit complicated. So we'll go ahead here. We'll look at this chart. What I want to show you here on the chart is how things are different depending on the Q rating, right? So you'll notice here, I can only look at chart B because we're in 1908. If I want to look at a different chart, I have to go to a different season. Q rating 4 means that the guy is not really that good at holding on, and you'll see right away that cutoff grade is a D in the 7th inning. Right, so when we hit the 7th inning with a guy who's got a Q4, he's going to become a D pitcher no matter what happens, right? Unless he's throwing a no-hitter, which is not likely unless he's like a 30, 29, 28. You see this here. Remember A and B I talked with you about? 5th inning, 2 base runner, you lose 1 letter grade. Not going to have a whole bunch of guys who are like this. In contrast, if you have a guy who is a Q0, aside from these lower grades, when you get up here, you're going to see his cutoff is in the 11th inning, which means that this guy's probably going to throw a complete game. And so that's sort of the way that you interpret the system when you're looking at a card, right? You don't even necessarily have to have the boards open because you can kind of guess. 11 for Q0, 10 for Q1, 9 for Q2, 8 for Q3, 7 for Q4. That's how it works on Advanced Pitching Chart B. So if we go look at, let's see here. We want to go look at starting lineups. I don't know, for the Giants, let's look at Christy Mathewson, right? Of course, I'd have to have the Giants up. There we go. Look at Christy Mathewson. He's got a grade 14 Q0. So he's probably going to throw a complete game most of the time out there, given what we just looked at. Grade 14 is pretty good, right? There's grade inflation in the world of APBA when you compare it to NP3. This is going to get a lot deeper into sort of the theory and into sort of the way that the numbers really work out. We're not going to talk about that very much here. That may be something that we leave for a much later time. But you'll notice that NP3 grades in general are going to be a bit lower on the high end and a bit higher on the low end. It's sort of interesting how this works out, kind of evens out for you. But there's Mathewson, who's a Q0, grade 14. You can look at this. Don't even have to look at that chart. And you know already, well, he's probably going to throw a complete game. Who did we see earlier today was McGinnity, grade 7 Q2. He's got a chance at doing that, but he might have a little bit of problems, especially with the grade 7. He's probably going to be down in his grades earlier on. Now let's look at somebody that we've never heard of. So I don't know, Roy Beecher. Right, Roy Beecher, who didn't pitch much at all, is a grade 1, which means he's going to give up a lot of hits and has a Q1. So, and he's a reliever. So, I mean, relievers are special. We'll talk about relievers, I think, in 2 days when we talk about this again. Rube Marquard, this was Rube Marquard's rookie season. He had one start, played one game, threw 5 innings, and has an ERA of 3.6, which isn't that bad. But remember that the grade is based not on the ERA, but on the batted against average. You say, well, that's not written here. It's not. It's sort of incumbent on you to be able to read the grade and be able to figure it out. It's deliberate that not all of these stats are written down. But Marquard, once you know how to read the numbers, is pretty easy to figure out. Grade 4, which means that he's not going to be so good, and Q4, which means that pretty soon he's going to go to absolutely nothing. And the reason why is because he only started one game and only pitched 5 innings. He's basically designed to give you maybe 5 if you're lucky. Right, and that's the way it is. You can go look at Dummy Taylor, Luther Taylor, Q2, grade 7, and that gives you an idea again of who he is and the sort of pitcher he is. Hooks Wiltsey, grade 11, Q0, so he's got a little bit more stamina, a little bit more by way of complete games, and probably a better pitcher than some of the guys that we just looked at. So there you go. That's a real basic way of looking at this and understanding these pitching grades. However, that's not all. We have more. We'll talk next time about relievers and how to interpret those and how that's different. And then afterwards, we'll start getting into some other stuff that goes on. It's a complex system, but if you take this one step at a time, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. So at least it does to me. If it doesn't to you, let me know. And I don't know. I could be speaking gobbledygook for all I know. Talk to you later. Take care. Bye.